In the last video, we talked about emotional containment, about the difference between actually feeling something and immediately reacting from it. And inside that conversation, there's another misunderstanding that comes up a lot, especially around emotional honesty. Because a lot of people hear, be honest about what you feel. And what they think that means is say everything immediately, exactly how you, exactly as you feel it, as intensely as you feel it, the moment it comes up. But emotional honesty and emotional dumping are not the same thing. And confusing the two creates a lot of unnecessary damage in relationships. Because honesty is important, very important. But honesty without regulation can become emotional discharge. And discharge is not the same thing as communication. When I say emotional dumping, what I mean is taking everything you're feeling internally and unloading it outward without processing any of it first. No pause, no reflection, no ownership, just raw emotion looking for somewhere to go. And if you've ever done that, you probably know the feeling. You're activated, your chest is tight, your thoughts are racing, something hurt, something triggered you, and suddenly it feels like I need to say something right now, not later, now. And that urgency matters because urgency is often a clue that your nervous system wants relief more than connection. That's an important distinction because emotional honesty is about truth. Emotional dumping is often about discharge. One builds connection, the other usually overwhelms it. For example, let's say someone takes hours to reply, or someone takes hours to reply. Try to say respond. They take hours to reply, and something in you gets activated. Maybe insecurity, maybe fear, maybe anger, maybe old feelings of abandonment. And now your mind starts creating some sort of meaning. They're losing interest. I knew this would happen. Why do people always do this? And if you dump from that state, the message might sound like, honestly, this is exactly why relationships never work. You clearly don't care. I may feel honest, but because you are feeling something real, but that's not emotional honesty. That's dysregulated interpretation. And there's a difference. Emotional honesty would sound more like, hey, I noticed I got activated when I didn't hear anything from you for a long time. I'm not assuming intent, but I just wanted to be honest about what came up for me. Completely different energy. Same emotion, but completely different nervous system states, different outcomes. And this is where a lot of people get confused because they think if I filter myself at all, I'm being fake or not honest. But regulation is not faking it. Containment is not dishonesty. Taking time to understand what you actually feel before expressing it is emotional maturity. Because your first emotional reaction is not always the full truth. Sometimes it's protection. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's old pain wearing the clothes of the current moment. And if you communicate from that immediately, you may not actually be expressing truth. You may be expressing activation. And it's important to understand most people are not doing this because they're trying to manipulate someone or intentionally create conflict. A lot of the time, they genuinely mean well. They just haven't learned yet how to stay connected to what they're feeling without becoming overwhelmed by it. So instead of saying, I feel anxious right now, or I think something in me got scared, the feeling comes out as blame, defensiveness, withdrawal, or just emotional pressure. Not because that's what they truly mean deep down, but because activation changes how emotion gets expressed. And when someone hasn't learned regulation yet, they often don't have the language or the nervous system capacity to communicate what's actually happening underneath their reaction. And when I say activation, I simply mean your nervous system has shifted into a reactive state. Your body feels urgency, your thinking narrows, your emotional intensity goes up. And when that happens, clarity usually goes down. That's human, not failure, just physiology. And this is where grounded masculinity matters, because some men learn to suppress their feelings, say nothing to avoid pain, shut down, avoid vulnerability, disappear emotionally. But others might swing in the opposite direction. They call emotional flooding honesty. They dump everything onto the other person without processing any of it. They might react immediately and not and they might react immediately and say the first thing that comes to mind and make the moment carry all of their emotional intensity. Neither of those things are grounded. Grounded masculinity isn't suppression and it isn't emotional chaos. It's honest emotional leadership, meaning you tell the truth without making someone else responsible for regulating what you haven't processed yet. That's a huge difference. For example, imagine some sort of conflict. Your partner says something painful to you, and immediately you feel hurt, defensive, misunderstood, or even angry. Your nervous system says, fight, defend yourself, explain to them, push back. And emotional dumping sounds like, wow, okay, so I'm just the problem then. Nothing I do is ever enough. That may feel honest in the moment, but really it's just protection speaking. Emotional honesty might sound more like, something in me reacted strongly to what you said. I, I want to talk about this well, but I need a minute to understand what's actually happening inside me first before we talk. That's strength. That's maturity. That's containment with honesty. So, how do you know the difference? Ask yourself, am I trying to communicate or am I trying to relieve emotional pressure? That question alone changes a lot. Because if your body feels urgent, tight, flooded, desperate to be understood immediately, you probably need some regulation first. Not silence forever, not suppression, just some space to process what's actually going on inside you. Even a few minutes can change everything. You can literally feel the difference in your body. Dumping feels hot, fast, contracted, pressurized, like you're spilling emotional pressure outward and expecting the other person to hold all of it with you. Honesty feels different. Still emotional, maybe, but clearer, less chaotic, more intentional, more grounded. So if you grew up believing that silence equals strength or emotional intensity equals authenticity, there's a healthier middle ground between those two. You can be emotionally honest without emotionally overwhelming the people around you. You can tell the truth without making your first reaction the truth. You can feel things deeply without collapsing, and you can feel deeply without making someone else carry emotions you haven't learned to hold yourself yet. Because emotional honesty is not saying everything the second you feel it. It's telling the truth from a place that can actually create understanding. And that changes everything, because the moment you stop being controlled by your first emotional reaction, you start becoming someone who can actually lead yourself in relationships, in conflict, in pain, and in life.